Hey there, welcome back to another episode of Becoming More Me, the podcast that helps high achieving entrepreneurs and professionals like you ditch the overwhelm and unlock freedom, authenticity, and inner peace that's been there all along, just waiting to be claimed. I'm your host, Teresa Lear-Levine. I'm an EFT master practitioner, hypnotherapist, law of attraction coach, and your go-to guide for nervous system support, energetic alignment, and subconscious transformation. Each week, I'm here to help you shift out of survival mode and step into your fullest, truest self. The one who knows they're worthy of joy, success, love, and ease. Today's episode is going to be a juicy one, especially if you've ever found yourself thriving in business or career, but still feeling lost, stuck, or in self-doubt when it comes to love and relationships. I am joined by the amazing Tyler Dudding, dear friend, gifted dating coach who specializes in helping women transform their love lives by breaking free from past patterns and emotional wounds so that they can finally attract the deep, meaningful, aligned relationships they've always wanted. Tyler has worked with over 400 clients, and what makes his work so powerful is that it's rooted in nervous system regulation, rooted in somatic therapy, and also in breathwork. This isn't about playing games. It's not about quick fixes or tricks or hacks. This is about healing from the inside out, reclaiming your confidence, and learning to love from a place of wholeness, not fear. If you've ever wondered why the women who do it all still find love to be the hardest part, or if you're navigating trauma, ADHD, high sensitivity, or subtle ways that self-sabotage shows up in dating and your love life, or even your marriage, this is a conversation you don't want to miss. Go grab a beverage, open your heart, and let's dive into this beautiful exchange about healing, love, and embodied connection. It all starts now. Hey, Tyler, thanks for joining me today. I'm really glad you're here.
I'm stoked to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So I always love to start getting to know who you are outside of what you do and everything else. So if you wouldn't mind filling us in on where you live, who you like to hang out with, hobbies, any fun, quirky facts about you, it's all welcome.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. First thing that comes to mind when you say that, I live here in Vancouver, Canada. I've lived here. I'm not from here, as you can tell by my accent. Born in England, raised in New Zealand, and maybe one of the quirky facts is I've lived in like 5 different countries. So I've been lucky enough to experience life in many places, which is beautiful. And in terms of the things about me, the first thing that comes to mind is just how much I love the ocean. I actually just went on a surfing trip. I got back on Monday, and
Cool.
it's a big part of who I am. I was raised by the ocean. I've lived near the ocean my entire life. And I'd say it's probably one of the biggest things that makes me me is being near the ocean with people that I love, doing the things that I love, being in the sunshine, going hiking in nature. I'm very much an outdoorsy person, other than the work I do online. Outside of that, I say I spend almost all of my time online, outside, should I say?
Yeah. If only we could get a great Wi-Fi connection to do Zoom calls by the ocean or
Yeah, that would be lovely.
encourage everything.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And outside of that, in terms of who I spend my time with, I have a lot of friends who are in a similar kind of field that we do. They do a lot of the inner work, all this kind of stuff, wanting to make their lives better, wanting to
Sure.
make the world a better place. I would say most of my friends are in there. I also have a partner called Carly, and she has a son called Benji, who's 4. And so I spend majority of my time with those two as well. And yeah, I love the people that I get to spend time with.
That's awesome. So what led you to the type of work that you do? And tell us a little bit about what you do as a dating coach.
Yeah, great. It's my main focus being a dating coach is helping high achieving women. That's like the people that I predominantly help. And my goal is to help them attract an emotionally available partner, also without lowering their standards, and really attracting the kind of love and relationship that they know they deserve and that kind of fulfills them across their life. And what led me here, two main things. One is I struggled in relationships for most of my life. I come from a family where there was a lot of divorces, a lot of, like unsettled relationships that like weren't super healthy. Everybody was doing the best they can. I can now see that on reflection, but I never really had a model of like, oh, this is the kind of relationship that I would like to have. And so I struggled in relationship for majority of my life until about, I'd say 5 years ago. And then I found the kind of work that I now help people do. And I started learning about relationships, about attachment styles, about shadow work and how I was showing up, and realizing that, for a long time I thought it was the other people. And I realized actually I was the common denominator in a lot of my challenges. And so that's really what got me into doing this work, is going through the same struggles that the people I now serve have been through. And yeah, that's why I care so much about it, because I know what it feels like to be them. And I
Right.
now have the thing that many of the people I work with want and work towards. And so and I know what it feels like to have that. And then like how nice it is to not even just the partner, but like the life and the friendship and the community and the joy in your life. And I just want people to feel it. You know, it's like I couldn't even imagine how I might feel now. And so I just have this like, they don't even know. And so, yeah, really wanting to help people, again, feel their own version. Not that everybody will end up like me, but their own experience of whatever that might be.
Oh, I love that. That's really well put. So then what inspired you to work with women instead of men?
It's a good question. Um, Two things I would say. One is I was raised predominantly by women. So I was raised like my dad worked pretty long hours, so he was like not very home too often. My mum pretty much raised me for the most part. My grandma, my aunties, there was like a whole lot of women that were in the big part of my upbringing. And I feel like a part of me wants to be able to give back to the women. You know, like I spent a lot of my life receiving so much from them, being supported by them, being believed in by them, being loved by them, and that there's something I just want to give back to them. You know, I want to be able to give back to the feminine, be able to support it in many ways. Feels very important to me as a part of like why I do what I do. And then secondly, I find that there's like a lot of healing in me doing work that's with women, because a lot of women that I work with maybe have like sometimes never even met a masculine man or a man who is like healthy or done some work. And so they're even just the experience of being coached by me and having, oh, like a man who can listen to me and a man who can hold space for me is like deeply healing for a lot of them. This is a lot of the feedback that I get. They say like, hey, even regardless of all the things you taught me, just getting to like be coached by you has been like an experience in and of itself. And so I think that unique angle is something that I really, really enjoy.
I love that. I love that. And I feel like mostly with coaches, we're helping people with all the things that we've struggled with before. I was actually
Yeah.
just creating a video before this, and I was like listing off all the things I help people with, and I'm like, man, I'm fucked up. Like, oh my God. It's like
Yeah.
a lot, like a long list of things that
Yeah.
I feel like I've made some pretty big strides with. So I don't know, maybe could you share like a candid story about how bad dating might have been for you before you were able to make these changes?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. I also, the same as you, I have a long list. When I first started coaching, they asked us to do a brain dump of all the things we've been through. And I wrote this day, it's like 2 or 3 pages long. I'm like, wow, I've been through a lot. But also positions us, I think, in a beautiful place to understand a lot of people. In terms of the dating kind of thing, I'd say my biggest challenge was really finding people who were in alignment. Like I just kept finding people who were close when I was dating. And it's like, oh, maybe they meet a little bit of it. And I kept finding that like the only way I was going to be able to say yes was if I like lowered my standards and accepted somebody that I knew wouldn't give me the life that was meant for me. You know, something I work on with my clients is creating standards or requirements. There's many, or non-negotiables. There's many words for it. And I kept finding that like, hey, if I say yes to this person, I'm going to have to let go of what I believe will make me happy. And I was kind of stuck in that for like a really long time
Mm,
until I did, some of the more of the energetic work, the belief work, the mindset work, and things like that, to now have a partner who meets everything that I was looking for. But I'd say that was like probably the biggest challenge for me, was like meeting people who are like close but not quite it, you know. And that was like, and I experience that with a lot of my clients now. They say like, oh, I meet somebody and they meet like 70% of what I'm looking for, but they're not, they're not all the things that I need in a life partner. And that was challenging because that went on for like 10 years, maybe. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Would you say that that correlates to how much like you have not become it yet, or the way
Yeah.
that you're becoming and matching like the frequency and the vibe of the person that you're trying to attract?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. It reminds me of Alex Hormozy has a video and he says, like, become a partner worth being with.
Mhm.
And it's like a pretty direct and blunt thing. And a lot of people don't like it because it means like, oh, well, maybe I need to be different. And a lot of people maybe have some resistance to that. But then when people will describe the person they want to be with, and this is my situation too, I'm like, oh, I want this partner who's like this and has these things. And if I looked at myself and my life, it's like, do I even match up to that person? Like, if that person was walking down the street, would we, energetically even want to engage? Would we be in the same rooms? Would we feel the same way? And it was like, no. And so I had to really get honest with myself of like, oh, I have these visions and these dreams. And yet, if I look at my daily actions or the thoughts that I'm believing or the feelings I have, this doesn't quite add up.
Right.
And so again, like, becoming more me, right? Becoming the person who that partner is just like a natural byproduct, which is a lot of what I teach. Is it's not really focusing on the partner. Again, it's focusing on you, because as you do that, the
Sure.
partner shows up, the community shows up, everything you want just shows up as a natural byproduct of you being that person.
Sure. Do you find that a lot of people are still stuck in just wanting to find the right partner that doesn't require them to change at all?
Uh, Yes, I would say so, but also no in terms of the people that I work with, because they're
Sure.
willing. Like the people
With
that come
them.
that actually decide to, hey, I'm ready to do some coaching. I'm ready to change my life. They've kind of, I think we all go through that phase where we're like, oh, it's the other person. I went there too. I was like, oh, all these people. And then I started to realize, like, oh, I think, again, I'm the common denominator here. There must be something within me that's attracting the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And so I think people kind of get like sick and tired of being sick and tired, maybe. They're like, okay, maybe actually there's something here that I am playing a role in. It takes two to tango. And then
Sure.
when that happens, people just take off. They're like, oh, it's like self responsibility.
Yeah. So then what do you think is it that makes high achieving women struggle in their love lives?
That's a great question. I would say one of the main things, and people listening maybe is like the masculine feminine energy is a huge one. There are many ideas of what this means, and I think everybody has their own. I don't think it means like somebody in a pretty dress who's like flowing around. I think everybody has their own unique expression. That's what I've learned with my clients is one person's feminine expression might be way different to
Oh,
somebody
yeah.
else's, but there's like a feeling of being in touch with their essence and that they feel like aligned and in sync with who they are in the world. But a lot of high achieving women spend a lot of time, like in the corporate
Okay.
business, entrepreneurs, all that kind of stuff, needing to be in their masculine energy.
Right.
And that's actually what thrived and allowed them to get to where they wanted to get to. And so now it's like, hey, what got you here won't get you there is one of my favorite quotes. And you
Mhm.
can't apply the same energy as you would in business or in work as you would in your relationships. At least not 100% crossover, because then what they find is they start attracting like feminine men, or like men who aren't taking the lead. And somebody gave me a really good analogy. They're like, I'm tired of being the cruise director. I want to just be on the cruise. And I was like, it's a really good one, right? And I would say that's probably true for many high achieving women, is they are the cruise directors of their entire lives. And I'm, at least the women I work with, want to just be on the cruise sometimes, and they want to be able to go sit down and sunbathe and go for a dance and do these things and not always have to be directing the ship.
Oh yeah, I'm much happier on the cruise.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
But that was not where I got to be in all of my relationships leading up to this one. But thankfully, now I've been on the cruise for a while, so
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
good place to be for anybody who's working on getting there.
yeah,
So then, what what types of modalities and things do you like to bring into coaching? I know like somatic therapy, breath work, that kind of stuff. Like, what do you
yeah,
like to use, and then how does that support this
yeah,
change and transformation for people?
yeah. Go. So probably a couple things I bring in. The breath work is obviously I'm in training right now to be a breathwork facilitator, and so there's a big part of we're doing like shorter versions of it. But what's important about it is it gets you in the body, right? And a lot of the masculine is in the mind, and mostly people who are highly masculine, even myself, spend a lot of time up in our heads. And so being able to get in the body, being able to bring ourselves down, get in touch and in tune with like, what does my body need in this moment? And really getting in touch with like the feelings and the sensations is like a micro way of tapping into what I would call the feminine energy within our body. And like, oh, what feels intuitive? What's pulling me towards this? Like if I really listen to myself and my heart and I listen to my body, what do I want to do from that place? And I'm realizing with my clients, they want to do something normally considerably different than if they were to listen to their mind. And
Hmm.
so that's a big part of it. Is like really getting embodied. Many ways to get there, right? Some of the breath work, meditations, some other things that we do. Even just like the becoming aware of the ways in which they're out of alignment
Sure.
or with who they would like to be. So like even though it's kind of mental, it allows them to see all the ways in which they're showing up that are like holding them back from who they want to be. And so then beginning to bring those into alignment. Again, whatever that means to these people, these women, it's different for each of them. But I'd say a shifting. And then the most important one, though, is like action as well, like actually doing something different with their lives. I think it's like shifting the beliefs in their lives a lot of people have like, even if you do a sentence stem of like men are, and I do this with most women when they start, we like men are cruel, men are scary, men are dangerous. Like the common trend is like, and then I say like, cool, well, are those beliefs serving you with where you'd like to go now? And those beliefs might have kept them safe, but having to let go of those again can be really scary because it's kept them safe. So shifting the beliefs and then shifting the emotional state that they're in is a really important one. And having practices, whether that's meditation, whether that's doing things they love that just
Hmm.
cultivate joy, or surrounding themselves with people that lift them up. Because if they're constantly feeling like guilt or sadness or hopelessness or shame to attract a partner that's going to create gratitude and joy is like, it just also doesn't add up. And it doesn't mean you have to be happy all of the time, but are we trending in a direction that's aligned with what we would like? So the energy, and then again, taking action. Like there's a very practical side, which I think the women I work with love because I have, I'm a man and I like strategy and I like structure. And so we have a very structured method called the love method, which is locate, organize, verify, and evaluate. So there's like a little bit of a system to add to the process that allows them to consistently get out and meet the right kinds of people. And I think combining all three of those things is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really cool. So we both do a lot of work with the nervous system then, and I have my own answers to this, but I'm curious how you would say, like, what role does nervous system regulation play in attracting and sustaining like healthy love, healthy relationships?
Yeah. Yeah. Huge. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if it can exist without it. I would almost go as far to say that much. Like, not that you have to be 100% regulated all the time, because I don't think that's maybe it's a real thing, but it's like we are regulating, but I think not having the tools, one of the biggest challenges is like my clients will go through something and it might activate something from their past. And again, the nervous system comes online and then they're no longer, my mentor calls it it's a paper tiger rather than a real tiger, but we still just see a tiger, right? And, and then because they're not regulated, they're like, I need to get away from this person. And then on reflection later on, they might realize like, oh, wow, that was just like my complete, and sometimes it's the other way, but a lot of the times it's this internal response that's really reacting very emotionally. And they're just trying to keep themselves safe. Like, and I think also being able to offer compassion for that, but also building the tools so that when something might challenge you or something might bring something up, because relationships, all that to me, that's the whole point of them, is that like they will bring up all of our stuff.
Yeah.
I'm reading this book at the minute called Getting the Love You Want with My Partner. And they say that, yeah, beautiful book. And they say Havel Hendricks and Helen Hunt, I believe, unless she's also changed her name. And they say that the purpose of marriage is to complete childhood, which is a very interesting perspective, right? It's like, the whole point of being in a relationship is actually to bring up all of these things so they can activate us. But people commonly do this without the tools. And so then they're like, oh, it's my partner, it's this thing. And then they get stuck in this loop. And so being able to break that and regulate ourselves is just so important. Maybe the most important thing, actually, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love that answer. So, do you see a lot of like trauma-based relationships or connections happening in like the past of people that you've worked with?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say a lot of people have been through, again, I wouldn't say I'm like technically trauma informed, so I'll just acknowledge that. Like it's not been in the training that I do. People have obviously spoke about it in some of the stuff that I've done, but so just acknowledging that. But my experience of it and what people talk about is like people have been through some really challenging things, and I think trauma is both. A podcast I listened to the other day was saying like little T trauma and big T trauma. Sometimes the big T is like the massive events, like a car crash or, being abused. And then the little T trauma is like maybe experiencing neglect or unkind words. And so I would say that everybody has been through some kind of relationship that is in some way traumatic for the most part. I'd say like, I don't like to generalize every human, but everyone I've talked to has had some experience that has in some way impacted them and now is influencing how they show up in the present moment based off what they've been through in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. So walk me through a little bit about like what working with you looks like.
Yeah, cool. So in terms of working with me, we, again, kind of focusing on the three main things I mentioned before is like the big focus is aligning the three areas. And so it's like you call it beliefs, energy, and action are like the three biggest places to start. And the way that I look at it is we kind of rate those areas and we rate your whole kind of dating world and what's going on. And we look at like how aligned are the beliefs, how aligned is your energy, and how aligned is the action that you're taking. And we can rank that, 1 to 10. And then from there, say the baseline for beliefs is 4 out of 10. The goal is to increase the baseline in your life. So whenever you're going on a date, whenever you're perceiving dating, rather than seeing it through a 4 out of 10 lens, like, oh, maybe I'm going to meet my person, but I might get hurt. You're going out on a date saying like, I deserve the person that I love and I can't wait to meet them. There's like a different shift of that. And so we raise the baseline of each area and then ultimately create momentum in each one of those areas. So it's like, I try to keep it as simple as possible. It's obviously unique for each person because everybody has their own experience.
Right.
But I also think people overcomplicate and make the process really complex when I actually don't think it needs to be. Like we all have our own unique thing, but if we really just aligned how we thought and then aligned how we felt and then took action that moved us towards what we wanted to, we would have the thing that we wanted ultimately if we did that over time. And people don't like to hear that sometimes. You're like, well, that's too simple. There must be this answer that's going to give me the thing that I need. And it's like the thing you need is right in front of you. I know
Yeah.
that was hard for me to accept when I first began this journey too. I was looking for some massive solution. And actually, I think it's the simple things that are the big things.
Have you joined the Becoming More Me community over on School, one of the fastest growing learning platforms without distractions and ads? If no, I'd love to see you there. My community is full of amazing, busy-minded entrepreneurs who are working on becoming who they feel called to be in this world, in life, in business, with their health, with their wealth, with their relationships, and doing it in a way that's fun and pleasurable. I have over $15,000 worth of actionable resources, things you can start using and implementing today, as well as all the information that you need if you're interested in small group coaching, one-on-one work, or any of the other services that I have to offer you, including the Becoming More Me with EFT program. Hop on over to school, skool.com/discovery. Type in my name, join the community, and I cannot wait to welcome you there. And it's great that there's simple answers, I think. But sometimes it feels like it would be better if it was more complicated, because then we could explain why we are where we are easier. Yeah. So you talk about helping people to like meet or connect with emotionally available partners. Can you explain a little bit about what that means to you or the people that you're helping, and how people can show up more emotionally available?
Yeah, of course. So one of the number one things that the clients I work with, one is like consistency. And I think that's like there's something in emotional availability to being consistent. So one is like, does this person consistently show up in my life? As I'm dating them, are they there to support me? Are they there? And again, not like overly dependent, but are they supporting me in my life? Are they available to me? If I send them a message, will they respond in a reasonable time and interact with me? If I communicate my needs, like, hey, I'm realizing that I need this, rather than either like shutting me down or attacking me, will they say, acknowledge and honor my needs and meet me in those needs? So I think my experience is like emotionally mature, emotionally available, probably similar words, but somebody who can meet us in how we feel and support us through that process, which commonly a lot of us didn't get, right? As children, our parents, again, did the best they could, but also had limited tools. Some of the things that we now know, weren't even available to them. And so we kind of have the familiar, and so we attract the familiar, and so we have to change those patterns to be able to attract somebody who can love us in the way that we want to be loved, someone who can meet us in our emotions and not make us wrong for them, somebody who can honor and celebrate and love our needs. Probably like those three things, I would say. And somebody who can communicate honestly and truthfully, right? Whether that's something we want to hear or don't want to hear. Somebody who doesn't hide or run away, but can really just tell us what is true for them while still honoring us in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. It was making me think of, I was watching the show Atypical. I don't know if you've heard of that one. It's on Netflix.
No.
It's about a family that has, they have a son and a daughter, and the son's autistic. And they were basically saying how like his reality is almost like more the reality than anybody's, because he's just so flat out honest about everything. Like nothing is sugar coated. But it's like, where's the fine line between like the brutal honesty like that, where you're like saying things you might not even need to say, and like being honest in a way that's caring and that's going to be connective in a relationship.
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of the quote, I might get this wrong, I can't remember this by, maybe it's Gandhi, but it's like, is it loving, is it necessary, is it kind? It's either Gandhi or somebody else.
We used to have a saying around here with our kids. It was NNT. It was like, is it NNT, nice, necessary, and true? Like,
there you go. Yeah.
If it's not NNT, then just zip it. Like, there were a lot of years when my kids were definitely, it didn't meet at least one of those three criterias when it was coming out of their mouth. And it was like, okay, get it.
It's good. Yeah, that's good. Well, speaking truth with love, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. So then where do boundaries come in, and how do you like to help people to create those in relationships?
Yeah, boundaries are massive. I would say a lot of people I work with, well, it's like the scale, right? Of like one side is rigid boundaries, which is like they're just really hard. The other side is porous, where someone really has no boundaries. And then in the middle, we'll call it healthy. I think there's a different word for it. Again, I didn't create this, is from somebody else. But the idea of it is like a lot of people I work with either come in with really rigid boundaries. They're like immediately just cutting people off. Like, oh, they don't have all the things, they're out. Like there's like this. And sometimes I think when boundaries are that rigid, we can be using it to protect ourselves and to actually keep ourselves from the things that we want. And then when it's porous, it's like, it doesn't matter what somebody else does. We don't even care. We're like, oh, well, that's fine. Or we start making excuses for them, or we start justifying their behavior. And we're like, oh, well, it's okay. Then maybe they were just tired. Or like, we allow people to walk all over us. And I think it's coming to this middle ground where we don't let people walk all over us, but we're not cutting them off. And it's really important because I found if we don't have boundaries, people don't respect us. And I don't actually think we really respect ourselves in many ways. And that's what gets mirrored in the partners that we have. And I found that this quote I really love is like, relationships commonly end how they begin. And so the idea is that like, if we don't set boundaries from the get-go, that will become something that happens down the road. And so how do we, keep ourselves safe and protected, but also honor what we want? And I think it is a really fine line. And again, looks different for everybody. But boundaries are so essential. And I'd say one of the bigger challenges people have, there's a book called Set Boundaries, Find Peace, a great book. And she talks about the idea that every time you set a boundary, you probably experience like a little bit of guilt. And I think people think that means they shouldn't set the boundary because they're having this feeling. And I think it's totally normal to like, hey, as we set boundaries and we start saying no to people, it's going to be uncomfortable, especially if like we've been a people pleaser or we're not used to doing that. It's going to like bring these feelings up, and just knowing that like those feelings are okay. Like we're here to also look after ourselves. And that's really important because when we do that, somebody will meet us in that. Right. And somebody who can't honor boundaries won't. And they're really telling us that they're not the person for us anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And you may have mentioned some of these patterns already, but what are some of the common relationship patterns that you see women repeating, and how do you help them to shift or adjust those?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. I'd say one of the most common ones that I see is, especially with the high achieving women, is like the cutting people off, right? Like they don't mean what I'm looking for immediately. They're out. And it's like, and the whole process is like entirely logical. And so it's like, cool, they don't have this one thing that like may or may not be a requirement. And so that's like, they just kind of cut people out of their lives. Like, I don't have the time, I don't have the space for this. The entire process is like very mind driven. And so in terms of how we shift that, one is like tapping into where this comes from, because maybe a part of them feels unsafe. And if we actually, like, sure, we can change the strategy, but if we don't get to the root of like, well, why do you actually feel this way? And commonly a really big one that I've noticed is the abandonment wound that I think a lot of people have. And so it's like, hey, I'm going to cut them out before they cut me out, because sometime in my past, somebody abandoned me or didn't give me what I need. And so I'll just remove people before they get the opportunity to remove me. And so that's like, so we do some deep work, right? That's like getting back in touch with the inner child. That's like bringing up the parts of you in your life that, were abandoned, right? And like, and even not if people were doing it on purpose. Sometimes we're abandoned by our parents, and they're not doing it on purpose. They're just doing it because that was the best that they could do at the time. And so using reparenting, so like really giving to that little version of us. We commonly do a lot of meditations in our sessions or things like this, where we'll like sit and cultivate the little version of them and build a relationship with it. Because like, imagine if there was a little kid in the room right now, they were like, well, who are you? I don't really know you. And so we have to get back in touch with it, re-nurture it, give it some love, and help let it know that it's safe. And then from that place, I find that pattern starts to change because the kid's no longer like cutting people out. So that's one part. And then the other part is like getting in touch also with the feminine side, with the feeling side, with the sensations, and not just making decisions logically, kind of having like a two-pronged approach. So sure, do people meet what I need for the life they want to live? And like, do I feel safe with this person? Do I laugh? Do I feel joy? And allowing those decisions to be made together rather than just from this place. That's probably like the biggest, or one of the biggest ones with the people that I work with.
Yeah. So, in the line of we coach kind of who we are or have been,
Yeah.
do those two things, the abandonment and, oh goodness, what was the first thing that you just said? It was just on the tip of my tongue. Oh, the cutting people off. Are
Yeah.
those two things that you experienced deeply yourself?
Yeah. Massively. Like the rigidity of how I was raised. No, how I was like how I responded to how I was raised. It was like that I just didn't let people in, right? Like I would just cut people off if people got too close. I moved. I said to you, I moved around 5 times. A lot of the times, I think I was moving because it kept me. No one ever really got to know me. You might know me for a year or for a year and a half, but then I would leave and I'd move to another country. So even in the way of which I was living my life, I was like rigidly cutting people off and like not staying in contact with them, ultimately to keep myself safe, right? So like 100% is exactly like that for me. And then the abandonment thing, the same thing too. Actually, the first two women that I fell in love with, when I was 15 and one when I was 19, both cheated on me.
Mm.
Broke my heart, broke my heart a lot. And I didn't respond well. I just went and got my pain and started throwing my pain at other people rather than healing it. And, it took me a long time to come back around to realizing like it's my responsibility to be with how I feel. But because I was so afraid of anybody ever doing that to me again, I just kept doing it to other people and I kept cutting people off and I kept pushing them out so that nobody could ever do what those two people did. But then I just realized pain was driving my life. And I was either going to keep doing that and be miserable for the rest of my life, or I could choose a new way. And so I took responsibility for my feelings, not for the other people's actions, and started this healing journey, and now here we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've known you for about a year, so I hope that doesn't mean that things are coming to an end.
No, the pattern's been broken. We are good. Yeah.
So how do you recommend that people like deepen or create more space to like sit with how they're really feeling and to be okay feeling it?
Yeah. Few things come up for me when I think about that is my mentor, he calls it, there's like the three things you need. One is like a body of work. So like something to study or learn, like different things resonate for different people, whether it's like somatic stuff, whether it's NLP, whether it's meditation, whatever. It can be anything. There's like no one right thing. I think it's like the quote, all paths lead home, right? Is a real thing. The second one is having some kind of mentorship, right? Whether this is, you could have a coach, you could have a meditation teacher, you could somebody who's maybe been through what you've been through and can kind of like understand. There's something that happens when somebody sees you in what you're going through and who has been through it, but can hold you in that. That's like, they call it co-regulating is like the word, right? They can co-regulate you through an experience that you might not actually have the capacity to regulate yourself through alone. At least in my journey, I've had many mentors, many teachers who have held me when I needed it. And I honestly don't know if I would have got through it without them. So, I think having something like that. And then thirdly, having a community. So like surrounding yourself with people who maybe are on a similar journey to you, or people who are curious about the same thing, or who have been through what you've been through. And I find when you have those three things, like something to help, learn, educate yourself, a system, a method, a tool, whatever it might be, somebody to help support you as like a mentorship, and then a community of people to go through it with together, you can do anything. Is like at least what I've in my life. I have those in many different areas of my life, and every time I get all three of those lined up, that area of my life will significantly shift. And I think maybe even the first thing before that, though, is you have to decide. You have to make a decision. Like, okay, I'm sick and tired of having the same pattern. Like me, it took me 10 years. It's actually amazing when you look back how long sometimes it takes people to be like it took me 10 years to be like, okay, I've had enough of this. I gotta do something different. But you have to really get to a point where you just decide like, my purpose is bigger than my fear, right? Or my desire is bigger than the thing that scares me. And people get there in their own times at different paces. But I really think there is like a decision that has to happen.
Yeah. I always like that decide comes from the Latin word to cut off.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, yeah. Cut off all other options.
Yeah. It's like when you decide, it's like a clear cut. So a decision is important. So I know it's been a big year for you with your personal relationships, and I don't know how much you're willing to go into things, but I'd love to hear some ways that maybe you've like healed or evolved in this last year, and how like, your partner Carly's helped you in that. Hey, interrupting this episode super quick because I'll bet you didn't know that you can hop on a free, no strings, 15-minute call with me and get answers and insights into those things that are challenging you the most in your life and business right now. And receive several insights from me that will really help you to start moving the needle in those areas where you desire transformation, be it your business, your personal life, your health, wealth, relationships, all the things. So go to gamechangingconversation.com, select a time, and we will meet and have a conversation about what's going on in your life and the outcomes that you would most like to create in the next several months. Can't wait to meet you and chat with you on a call. Now back to the episode.
Yeah, of course. We've had a beautiful time healing. It's been challenging at times, and but also been beautiful. To me, that's the whole point of it. Is that like it's going to bring these things up that will challenge us. And are we committed again to we made a decision that no matter what happens, we're going to move through it. And so we have made that decision. Some of the things that came up, I would say, for me personally in my relationship, especially when it kind of began, was we dove in like quite quick. which was great and totally okay. And like we had the tools and capacities to go through it, but also brought a lot of things up. Actually, for the first time in my life, I would have probably identified as someone who's avoidant from the attachment styles and somebody who like withdraws and cuts away. And actually, at the start of our relationship, I was really anxious, and it was like not something I had experienced. And I notice actually with the clients I work with now too, a lot of them identify as avoidant, but they also say an avoidant is somebody who's like been anxious for so long that they just become avoidant. And so I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting because that's kind of my experience. And so a lot of anxiety came up for me, which was new. I actually had a few panic attacks, which was like just in my experience of like being with these new emotions. And I was like, wow, this has never happened ever before. So I had to get some support around that. I also got to learn a lot more about anxiety because previous to that, people would talk about anxiety and I'd be like, I can't even resonate with what you're saying. Like, I don't know. It's never been my experience.
What a
Yeah. And then now that's different. I actually got to experience it. And, I still at times might experience some anxiety, which, just makes me human. But I got to learn about this whole new world. I got to learn, yeah, like the methods to really, again, like you said, regulating. I started a breathwork facilitator training, which has been like, yes, it's to help me teach facilitate, but it also has been this personal journey, as I'm sure you have when you go through the facilitator ones too, of like, getting in touch with me, getting in touch with my body, being able to really ground in my, like emotionally regulate myself even more in the context of a relationship that at times can, bring some things up, and being able to hold myself and at times hold Carly through our experience has been like calling me to the next level. They say like a new level, new devil. And it's like every time something happens, it's like there's going to be something that pushes and challenges you. And I personally believe that that's the gift of being in a relationship, even when it can be challenging sometimes.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I always feel like the personal anecdotes are the things that people most resonate with as far
Yeah.
as moving through. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Is there anything else that you feel like you want people to understand about dating or relationships that we haven't covered yet?
Hmm. First thing that comes out to me is just like you can have everything you want, but it's going to require something of you. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people, I think, want the thing without doing anything for it. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's going to require parts of you to die. It's going to require part of you to let go of things that maybe my rigidity had served me for 15 years of my life. I had to stop it because it doesn't serve me now in my relationship. It's like, you're going to have to let go of things that have kept you safe, things that, you rely on and you believe you need in this moment. And you're going to have to let go of them, and you're going to have to learn new things. You're going to have to learn new ways of thinking in the world, new ways of feeling in the world, new ways of operating, interacting, socializing, going to places that maybe you've never been. And it is going to require something. It's going to require courage. I would say like one thing all my clients have is courage. Like nobody got where they were today without courageously facing, like in the world we live in, not that many people, if you look at it globally, do the things that we do in terms of the work and really lean in and break their patterns. And it's like, that's a courageous act alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think just it takes courage, but we all have that courage if we choose to. Like I've seen people who come in and they're like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do these things. I'm struggling. And then I see them 6 months later and they're like in a dream relationship. They've lost 20 pounds. They're making more money. They're like, and ultimately under all this, like they're happy and they're fulfilled. And they're like, there's a sense of peace that they didn't have before. And it's like, if they can do it, if I can go from where I went from in my life and the things that I was doing to where I am today, and actually, I would say it's a relatively short period of time, anybody can do anything. And I think that's important to remember. Sometimes in the world we live in, we're stuck with limitations, and it's like, no. We're in an unlimited world if we choose to be.
Absolutely. And I love what you said about courage, because courage, I'll do another Latin word, or I guess it's also the French word, because I think it's Latin cur or French cur,
Yeah.
which means the heart. So like that means to speak one's mind by telling all of one's heart, which I think like how could it be any more profound for relationships than that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I didn't know that was the meaning of the word. And so it's interesting that it's almost like courage is required and then they get the love that they want because it's just a mirror, right? To them being courageous in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if I had one last thing to say, it would be like what you seek, two things actually. What you seek is seeking you. Like there's a reason you desire what you desire. That's my true belief is like there's a reason you've thought about wanting to be in this relationship or wanting to have this beautiful relationship with the partner you already have or wanting to have this dream business that you're creating. Because like again, whatever you believe in, but like some timeline somewhere in the future, you already have it. That's why you're like, it's there. And like just feeling that is like what you seek is seeking you. And I think when you really believe that, you start to see it as well. You're like, wow, oh wow, like things will start to happen. And you're like, oh, this is like it's outside of the logical explanation of things.
Absolutely. I always say you got to believe it before you see it.
Yeah, yeah, that,
And you have to, visualization and seeing it before it comes into the physical world is super important too.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And I think reorienting the focus. A lot of times we think we want this like tangible thing, and actually, my experience is that we want how we're going to feel when we have it. And if we realize that, we can create a shortcut of like, oh, if I have a partner, I'm going to feel safe, secure, cherished. If I have all this money, I'm going to feel security. Or if I have these adventures, I'm going to feel joyous. And if we realize that, well, then we can fast track it. And the feelings we experience, even when these things happen, are still within us. And so,
right.
like, how do we come back to that experience now? How do we not get too lost on this adventure or this search for something?
Yeah.
Obviously it's still fun to search and to go on adventures, but like cultivate within you what you want, and then what you want will just be there anyway. That's what I've also seen happen time and time again.
I always think of Neville Goddard and how he would always talk about like putting yourself in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and that
Yeah,
attracts the
yeah,
reality of it to you. So
yeah, yeah.
beautiful. So if people want to learn more about you or what you do, what's the best place to find you?
Cool. Yeah, best place to find me right now is just on Instagram at tylerdudding.com. Not .com, at Tyler Dudding on Instagram.
Perfect. That's easy enough. Anything else?
No, just thank you for having me, and thank you to the people that are listening. If you have any questions, feel free on Instagram. If you want, send me a message. I'll happily answer questions about anything, if anything arisen.
Well,
Yeah, feels like a gift to get to do what we do and get to have this conversation and get to be of service to people.
absolutely. Well, thank you for being here and all of you listening. I know there's so many choices you have when it comes to podcasts. Thank you for choosing Becoming More Me. Thanks again, Tyler.
Thank you.
Thanks for spending some of your precious time with me today. If you loved this episode, please leave a review or simply share it with someone else who would get great benefit from it too. If you share on social media, please tag me so I can personally connect and thank you. Until next time, keep taking bold and brave steps towards becoming more of who you want to be in this world. You are capable, you are worthy, and you are enough. And if your inner critic is still trying to argue with those facts, hit me up. We've got work to do.